All right, well, hello and welcome to the next episode of Familiar Evils YouTube, where I am now going to be going over Boo's Astral Menagerie. I took a moment to kind of look through and decide how I wanted to do this, and I I don't see myself going through every detail in this book. There's too much to go through, and I would love to do a Mr. Rex on this and just go through like every bit and explain all the history and lore behind everything. But I'm not Mr. Rex. I am Familiar Evils. So we're just gonna go over some sections of this for all you DMs. Players may or may not want to look at this, at the threat of a spaced harass for your metagaming. But you're going to notice we're going to just quickly get started. I already went over like what chapters there were in the complete overview. Got to look at some of the initial stuff. Let's see what Astral Variance is about, because that might tell you like how to reskin things. Just kind of getting started in here. We're not going to waste too much time on introductions. So, without further ado, let's look at Astral Variance. If you want more creatures to populate an adventure in space, look no further than the Monster's Manual. Entities of the outer planes, such as angels, devils, and Sladdy, are just as likely to be found on, the astral plane as they are on the material plane, or material plane world. The same can be said for Aboleth giants, mind flayers, umber hulks, vampires, and other Monster Manual creatures. Practically any terrestrial creature can be turned into an astral-dwelling creature, whether it requires air or not. For example, a stone giant living on an asteroid might rely on the asteroid's air envelope for survival, or it might not need to breathe air at all. Similarly, a mimic stowing away on aboard a spelljamming ship might be an ordinary specimen or one that has adapted to the life in wild space. You can turn any terrestrial creature into a wild space dwelling variant by giving it the following trait, if nothing else: that the creature does not require air. That's a big thing that Mike Shea, and I go off about Mike Shea all the time because he's, Slight Flourish, Lazy Dungeon Master. He's a great resource, great ideas. Plug him all the time without any kind of monetary recompense for it. But he talks about reskinning things constantly. Like, if you really wanted to, you could reskin, I don't know, Tyranny of Dragons somehow into a Spelljammer campaign. Like, it really just, however you look at something, you can create something new out of it and really get a lot of use out of all your books if you know how to reskin things. So being able to reskin your monster, this is really important. And he actually does that in one of his latest books I really should review. It's really good, so I should go over and let you all see it. So let's see, what do they got here for unusual attacks and magic? It's probably not really that important, but here they do have like the encounters that I was talking about in the overview, which you can also find in the DM screen. So you have these just sitting there ready for your immediate use on the DM screen. So, but we're going to start out with Artux. So we're going to kind of just, I think what I'm going to primarily be doing here, as my voice cracks from speaking so much, we're going to kind of go over some of the sections. So we'll go over Artux and then we'll go over Astral Elves, but we're not going to spend too much time on any of them. So what are Artux? They're intelligent plant creatures that live to wage war. They are lawful evil, apparently by nature. Beholders destroyed their original homeworld and scattered the survivors across the material plane. These survivors formed small nomadic cells. Arctic cells can be found throughout wild space, including aboard spelljamming ships whose former crews were either murdered or forcibly ejected by a band of Artuks. These are the sus members of the crew, apparently. Artuk's body is shaped like a 5-pointed star and is covered with thick, flexible bark. So they are plant creatures. Let's see. I'm not going to go into crazy amounts of detail. They're big. About 6 foot tall. Arctic's preferred method of attack is to shoot forth a gooey tongue and use it to drag enemies toward the center of its body so that it can batter them with powerful branches. It can also spit pellets of radiant energy. That is interesting. These Arctics here range, that's challenge rating 3, 2, and 2 for your Arctic warrior, priest, and elder. So they have their own classes even. They're very much, despite the fact that they look so, for lack of a better word, alien. I guess that's the perfect word. They are rather intelligent. They have intelligences above 10. Well, this one has just a 10 intelligence. He's a warrior. Yeah, so Arctics. Interesting. Murderous plant creatures. A everyday staple of sci-fi fantasy in space. We move on to Astral Elves. The aristocrat is cool because they can summon a solar dragon once per day, and that's I'm just gonna summon a whole dragon. A whole dang dragon. So, long ago, some elves ventured to the astral plane to be closer to their gods. There they ceased to age and could exist indefinitely without sustenance. So they don't need to eat, apparently. Astral elves were among the first creatures to dwell in the Silver Void. As other explorers have reached for the stars, astral elves had to reckon with violent neighbors and strange visitors. Over the eons, astral elves have clashed with numerous invaders, including Sirlons, Mind Flayers, and Githyanki. When dealing with others, astral elves customarily cover their faces with ornate visors, becoming faceless extensions of their gods. Their fierce devotion to the pantheon of elven deities is repaid with divine power. For example, the gods invest astral elf warriors with the power to channel the radiant energy of starlight through their weapons, just as the Emperor astral elf leaders just as they empower astral elf leaders with the ability to cast spells and summon solar dragons. Dear Lord, astral elves are no joke. What else about them? I guess just read through the whole thing. They seem really interesting. Astral elves ply the astral sea of wild space and ship with their own design. These ships are fashioned from crystals harvested from wild space systems, bound together with an organic plant-based material that hardens like ceramic. The elves sculpt these substances in various configurations to create star moths, which are in Astral Adventurer's Guide, and other vessels. These elves also reshape the petrified bodies of dead gods found adrift in the Silver Void, transforming them into floating cities and citadels. Although the Silver Void is their home, astral elves often venture into wild space systems and place their ships and citadels in orbit around stars. Yeah, I think that's... Astral elves do this for several reasons. Proximity to the star allows the astral elves to forge pacts with solar dragons and collect starlight, which the elves use to grow crystals and repair their ships. Most important, astral elves use their time outside of deep astral to replenish their numbers by having and raising children. So they leave the astral. So most important, astral elves use their time outside of deep astral to replenish their number. Okay, so they have kids outside of the astral sea. So they leave back to the material plane, I guess, to have kids, to raise a family. Many astral elves are thousands, in some cases tens of thousands of years old. Whatever their disposition, their longevity gives astral elves a perspective on time that few other kinds of creatures can appreciate. Whether they chose to live in quiet contemplation or strike out to explore the far reaches of the multiverse, astral elves tend to see events happening elsewhere as having little to no meaning to them. Like I said before in one of the previous videos, come on. Vulcans. Astral elves are Vulcans. They're just, this is illogical. You are illogical. You got your astral elf aristocrat here who CR8. That ability to summon a young solar dragon is pretty impressive. But it is a 50% chance, so it's not like they can do it every time. Which I guess you'd be like, wow, they raised their sword and it doesn't happen this time because it just doesn't work. Let's see, do they have any? Yeah, the rest of these are lower ranking in CR, but they got their commanders, their honor guards, elf star priests, and warriors. Yeah, I think these are a very interesting group of people. Oh. Yeah, you'll notice that a lot of these, like the autonomes. Actually, autonome is just one. But like you have Githyanki in here, and they have all the different type of like warriors, priests, da 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 da. And they do so with quite a few of the races. I think they even do so with like Hadozi. Put your autonome in here. It's a CR2 construct. Kind of went over what an autonome is in the book with the races in it. You got Barog, a giant with 4 arms. Just makes me think of I can't remember his name from Mortal Kombat. It's the big old I think he's like 4-limbed giant dude. Just put him in a fighting pit. That'd be fun. Stick him up against the barbarian or the bard, better yet. I think Chwingas are just cool. And, you know, just little pestering elemental spirits. They remind me of Miyazaki spirits. But, yep, you got Chwinga astronauts. That's pretty cool. Cosmic horrors. What the heck is a Dwar? Oh my god. Dwars are short, pudgy, flightless avians that look and move like penguins. They are invertebrate merchants, always looking for an opportunity to turn a profit. Dwars conduct their dealings in secrecy, preferring to do business in dark alleys and out-of-the-way places, even when the items being bought or sold aren't illegal or dangerous. They tend to dress in garish mishmash of clothing, but many of them also shroud themselves in hooded cloaks. A group of Dwars is called a cartel. The average Dwar stands 3 feet tall and has bright plumage instead of wings, has arms and tiny hands. Dwars prefer to communicate through a form of telepathy they call merging, in which 2 Dwars stay in mental contact with both, are telepathically linked with a third creature. Dwars have their own pantheon of deities, made up entirely of gods of commerce and wealth. These deities include Joaquin, Abathor, and Zilkis. By focusing on the worship of such deities, the Dwars hope to become the best merchants in the multiverse without alienating or offending any god in particular. I just want to... just a bunch of penguins with the same philosophy as the Ferengi. Rule of acquisition, number 138. Just imagine him quoting off rules of acquisition constantly. Like, already, the Dwars alone make me want to run a Spelljammer campaign. I just... Something about these tiny little, like, the size of a Jawa. Freaking penguin creatures. Penguin merchant Jawas. Dear Lord. Yes. Give me more. I want a Dwar playable character. That is pretty cool. Pretty cool. The Eyemonger looks terrifying. It looks like a comet made of with one big old eye. Or the CR10. Yeah, that is pretty. They could swallow you by the looks of it. Anti-magic Gollet. Anti-magic Gollet. That's something I never thought I would see. Aesthetic. A creature, an aberration by the name of an aesthetic, which looks like a sort of squid or jellyfish-like creature with bioluminescence. The aesthetic has the properties of a spell-jamming helm. Oh, they're gargantuan. But only its Rhaegar creator can attune to it. So these are like living ships. That is pretty cool. Aesthetics are basically living spelljammer ships. With, oh dear lord. Yeah. This is a pretty cool series of books here, I have to admit. A Fear, or pronounced fear. So a fear is a tentacle horror that feeds quietly on strong emotions to minimize the chance of harm to itself. It prefers to devour nightmares of other creatures while they sleep. That is terrifying, and I'd love to throw in any campaign. Oh, look at that. Just look at that thing. Gosh. Aberration. This is going to be my favorite book as a DM. As a DM, I love monster manuals. I just love these kind of things. And my players probably hate them because I find all sorts of just wonderfully terrifying entities to have to fight. Here you got your GIF. I'll go over this a bit. It's easy to spot a GIF in a room. These burly folk are 7-foot-tall, hippopotamus-headed people. Wild space and its associated ports GIF are most often encountered as spacefaring mercenaries. These troops are renowned for their martial training and love of explosives and are typically armed with gleaming firearms. Every aspect of these spacefaring GIFs society is organized along military lines. From birth until death, each has a military rank. Promotions don't depend on time in service, but are granted by superiors as well, or as rewards for valor. Muskets and grenades are the specialties of many GIF regiments. The bigger the boom, the brighter the flash, and the thicker the smoke it produces, the greater the glory for the one wielding the weapon. All right. That is, you got your warlords. Oh my goodness. I think GIF are pretty awesome, and I look forward to throwing them into my homebrew world without the technological stuff to them, because my homebrew world is more high magic than it is with like firearm technology at the moment. So unfortunately, GIF won't have the kind of guns that they have here. But going from GIF, we go to the Gith, or the Githyanki, which would have been nice to have just added in here as a playable race into the Astral Adventurer's Guide, just to have it there. You can get it out of Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse, as well as Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, but it would have been nice if they had added it. Just have it there. Like, why wouldn't you just have it there? Because then the player is like, well, I don't have access to Githyanki. I don't have Monsters of the Multiverse or Tome of Foes. You know, but it's so much online, it's not that difficult to get a hold of. You know, all of this is kind of minor gripes in the end, really, right? But it would have been nice to have there. Githyanki descended from the ancient people who were all progenitors of Githzerai, or Githzerai. These tall, gaunt folk have potent psionic powers and dwell, for the most part, on the astral plane. Among the best known Githyanki are the followers of the Lich Queen, Vlaakith. They terrorize the astral plane, raiding into wild space to plunder the multiverse of its magic and riches. The Monsters Manual and Monsters of the Multiverse contain a variety of Githyanki for use, or for your use. This section provides additional options. So there's a few here. Let's see what they got. You got the Xenomancer, which is a 9th level, or 9th CR, which is the highest you got here. You got a Starsteer and a Buccaneer. What's interesting about these? They got Astral Step, So they can teleport 30 feet. They have a parry, multi-attack, spell casting. What's their telekinetic bolt? 3d10 plus 4 force damage. Heavy hitter right there. You'll notice that they have the similar things that like Monsters of the Multiverse did with a lot of stat blocks, is adding a spell-like ability as their main attack that can't be counterspelled. So you're going to see a lot of that here, but then along with a few spells that are actually there, none of which are attack spells. We move on to the Hadozi, one of my favorites to come out of this. And just, I don't know what it is about monkey people. They're just cool. And give a monkey a gun, like Planet of the Apes. These guys are going to take over everything. Hadozi are slender, highly adaptive humanoids with simian features and their own language. Their feet are fully as dexterous as their hands, even to the extent of having toes. Yeah, we've read about this in the Astral Adventures guide. I'm going to remember it eventually. I got to remember 3 books all at once for an entire set. So you got 3 books in a set, all different names. I'm trying to remember them all. Talks about, them living high up in the trees. They had a crazy wizard who ended up dying because he was an idiot and essentially a slaver. Not essentially, literally, he was a slaver. He created a Hadozi to enslave them, and then the Hadozi are like, heck no. It's basically Planet of the Apes. They became intelligent and said, hey, why should we listen to you? Give us even one good reason. None? Well, bye. Oh, and you're dead. Jammer Leech. Oh, man. Oh. This looks like... What is this? A Jammer Leech is a barnacle-like creature that begins life as a space-dwelling spore that attaches to the hull of a spell-jamming ship. With the leech inside in larval form, a spore that remains attached to a ship for days punctures the hull and begins to develop a hard shell that roughly matches the color of the hull. The shell is affixed to the ship by glue-like substance secreted by the leech. The shell grows until it's about a foot in diameter. The leech inside is reddish-purple in color, with a body resembling that of a snail. It's a single watery eye at one end and with a spiked tentacle protruding from just below the eye, which is used to defend itself. A mated pair of leeches produces 1d6 spores every month. Some of these spores might join their parents on the hull of the ship, while others float off, waiting to attach themselves to another unwary vessel. A jammer leech damages the hull of the ship to which it is attached and absorbs magic from the ship's spell-jamming helm. It can discharge this magic from time to time as a defensive measure if the crew of the ship becomes aware of leeches that have become attached. It's customary for them to try to scrape the leeches off the hull rather than attack them with weapons. Killing a leech while it is attached to the ship is dangerous because the trauma of the death can be felt by the ship's spelljammer, who is weakened and incapacitated by the shock. Okay, that's interesting. I like that. That is a problem. This is just a creature that it's just a problem. I just love the aesthetic of space whales. I don't know what it is. Space whales, they're just cool. Space whales are just my vibe. And they are the Kindari. I have to have like some kind of ancient celestial Kindari god. Like that has to be a thing. Just imagine some massive like Kindari god with just like light golden sparkling light coming off of it, magnificent radiance. I don't know, just seems so cool to me. Kindari are among the largest creatures found in the wild space. They resemble aquatic whales in general shape and are mammals as well. An adult specimen can be up to 80 feet long. A Kindari lacks a noticeable mouth. The leading edge of its body is dotted with small eyes that can emit bright beams of light, which the creature uses to blind predators before making its escape. Kindari communicate with one another over long distances by sending flashes of light from their eyes and draw their nourishment from the light of the sun, of suns and stars. It's the same thing. Just say the stars. Stars are suns. Whatever. The Kindari is large enough to have its own gravity plane and air envelope, enabling smaller creatures to live and travel on its body. Mosses, moles, and other parasitic organisms grow on its surface, which in turn attract predators to clean them off. Kindari might have scavers feeding on these parasites, which it doesn't mind. An extremely old or sick Kindari can be identified by the overgrowth of vines and vegetation on it. The bones and cartilage of a dead Kindari do not deteriorate after parasites devour the creature's flesh. A Kindari skeleton can be transformed into a spell-jamming ship by placing a spell-jamming helm inside it. Kindari are peaceful creatures but have natural enemies including lunar dragons, solar dragons, and various peoples that inhabit wild space. Oh my god, these are so cool. I'm sorry, I think these are awesome. I'm imagining a portion of an adventure with a Kindari where you gain their trust. There's something they need you to do. You gain their trust and they lead you to some massive dead Kindari set of bones and allow you to use it as your spell jamming ship. That's so cool. That is awesome. I love it. And then, just gifts abound, because now we're going to go from Kindari to another thing I think is absolutely awesome, lunar dragons. I am going to be putting a lunar dragon in my homebrew world immediately. Lunar dragons, also known as moon dragons or phase dragons, are capricious, xenophobic creatures. Not everybody can be perfect, apparently. That makes their lairs inside desolate moons by burrowing through the rock. Before laying eggs, a female lunar dragon stocks her lair with food. She won't leave the lair again until the eggs hatch and the offspring are old enough to fend for themselves. Lunar dragon eggs have stony shells that are pale white or light gray in color. Lunar dragons are alabaster white when they hatch and gradually turn darker as they age. Ancient moon dragons are the color of slate. Lunar dragons enjoy depriving other creatures of treasure more than acquiring the treasure themselves. Often found among the treasures in lunar dragons' horde are one or more spell-jamming helms, as seen in the Astral Adventurer's Guide, yes, taken from vessels that dare to invade the dragon's territory. A lunar dragon can become incorporeal, but not to the extent that it can pass through other creatures or solid objects. In this semi-incorporeal state, roughly half the dragon's body is dark and distinctly spectral form. Has a dark and distinctly spectral form. Okay, I was reading that weirdly. So they don't seem you can make them however you want. My homebrew world, I just don't know. I think an ancient lunar dragon or just a lunar dragon god of some sort. I love just different types of god stuff, and I kind of got tired of the idea of, but every time, Bahamut, the platinum dragon god, the god of all god dragons, oh come on, I can't have that like everybody else. I don't know, it just seems overwrought. It's in Critical Role, it's in everywhere, and I know that they technically they're all over the multiverse, and I could have populated my world with typical gods, but one of my players is like, what gods are in your world? I'm like, well, thinking I could put the Faerunian gods or otherwise in here, but I don't want to. So I just have the entities of life and light and death and darkness right now, and then eventually gods will appear. So I get to essentially create my own gods over time, which I thought was far more interesting. And so maybe I'll have a lunar dragon god of some sort. You got your adult lunar dragon, young, and wormling, which is nice. But we're going to move on to Megapede. Terrifying. Terrifying. I don't like centipedes. I don't like millipedes. And they're disgusting and awful and wonderfully great to throw at people. What are megapedes? Enormous centipedes that can be as much as 150 feet long. Most specimens top out between 100 to 120 feet. Their dozens of legs are 5 feet long and tipped with flexible claws. They have fur-covered carapaces. A megapede that lives in a sandy environment often buries itself in the sand and waits for prey to wander nearby. But megapedes also nest in cavernous underground chambers. Man, just imagine them coming out of the ground and attacking your players. Mercane. What are these? More merchants. Mercanes are merchants who trade primarily in magic items, advanced technology, including artifacts and spell-jamming helms. These 12-foot-tall, lanky blue giants dress in elegant robes and have elongated heads and long, spindly fingers. They're kind of like cone heads by the looks of it. They use spell-jamming ships to cross the Astral Sea and travel from world to world within wild space systems, where they conduct most of their business. It's rare to see more than one mercane at a time, though it's common for a mercane to be accompanied by underlings or bodyguards. Mercanes will conduct business with anyone fairly and reliably, provided the other party has neither harmed nor swindled another mercane in the past. Mercanes have a special form of telepathy that enables them to communicate with one another across the multiverse. A mercane often uses this ability to warn another mercanes about individuals who are dangerous or unreliable. Once a mercane has been offended by someone, getting back into their good graces is next to impossible. Alright, that's going to be a challenge for your players who like to try and swindle people. I could imagine a group being very angry at a rogue who steals from a mercane. You'll never get to do anything with him again. Got your murder comet. Some of us have seen that online. That's terrifying. But this looks even worse. What in the world is a Nethalgu? Nethalgu. Known throughout the multiverse as Oh, no. Oh, Starship Troopers. Brain monsters. At least they don't look like a certain nether region that the brain monster was meant to look like, if you know what I mean. Those of you old enough to have seen Starship Troopers. Yeah, so the brain collectors Nethalgu consume the brains of humanoids and use them as receptacles to enhance their magical abilities. Nethalgu are born in the nightmare's far realm, but they spread across the astral plane and find their way into various worlds of the material plane where brains are much more abundant. Nethalgu has a bulbous body and 6 legs resembling those of a crustacean, 4 bulging eyes, and a tooth-filled maw dominate its hideous visage. Behind and above these features, 1 or more lumps protrude from its body, each one containing a brain the Nethalgu has consumed. After a Nethalgu kills a victim, it uses its pincers to cut open the victim's head and remove the brain. It then swallows the brain whole. The collected brain is stored inside one of the several pockets in the Nethalgu's head. Once it has collected 12 brains in this fashion, it is overcome by an urge to return to the far realm and begins devoting its energy to finding a way home. In an encounter, with a Nethalgu, roll a d12 to determine how many brains it already has collected. What does it do with these? It's to enhance their magical abilities. I'm assuming there's more to this. Brain dump. What is that? So gains the magical ability to speak and understand languages known by the brain's previous owner. Oh, God. There's few things more terrifying in science fiction and fantasy than things that consume and use people's brains. Get a multi-attack. They make 1 bite and 2 claw attacks, so they have 3 attacks overall. They have a mind blast that recharges on a 5 to 6. These things are terrifying, and I love them because I hate them. As a DM, anything that I personally hate when it comes to just like how terrifying I find them, it can be perfect bait for terrifying my players. So there's certain things I still can't even do to my players. Yeah. Oh, and then you got the Yogi, who showed up in Spelljammer Academy. They even have pirates. What is? Yeah, their intelligence goes up to 13 and 16. Yogi Void Hunter. Wow. They don't stay 6th intelligence swarms for long, apparently. And then you move on to plasmoids. Okay, this makes me want to make a plasmoid bard who essentially, or no, mastermind rogue. Plasmoid mastermind rogue who is essentially like Jabba the Hutt. Picha chaka wuki bonawa twepi solo. Plasmoids are intelligent oozes. We already know this. That change their shape at will. We know that from, once again, Astral Adventurer's Guide, their makeout. So you want to learn about that. You'll probably have already watched that video, but you can always go back and learn more about how plasmoids work, because you can play one now. I want to learn about what a plasmoid boss is. On occasion, due to some biological anomaly, a plasmoid balloons in size upon reaching adulthood. Around the age of 20 years, plasmoids who use their increased size and strength to boss around smaller, weaker creatures can easily end up in positions of power, surrounded by loyal underlings, sycophants, and would-be usurpers. A plasmoid boss might be the master of a guild, the leader of a criminal enterprise, the lord of a plasmoid community, or the captain of a spell-jamming ship. Regardless of their roles they secure for themselves, plasmoid bosses need no small amount of charm and wit in addition to their strength and size to stay in power for long. It's Jabba the Hutt. It's what it is. It may not look quite like Jabba the Hutt. It's got all the bulbousness. What can they do? I mean, they obviously have Amorphous. They have a multi-attack, 3 pseudopod attacks. They do have Uncanny Dodge, which makes sense. As I imagine, like, as you go to stab this guy, and you think, oh, this should be easy. It just opens up a hole. That's great. What in the world is a Sirlon's? Lawful evil aberrations. Dear Lord. Oh. Malevolent worm-like creatures that live on the astral plane, fully grown specimens 7 foot long. They have legs that end in hooves and arms that end in hands with 3 long fingers. A Sirlon's eyeless head resembles that of an earthworm capped by a maw ringed with teeth. Sirlons adorn themselves with richly colored robes and rarely wear armor or carry weapons. They are lawful evil. Oh. 1 out of every 100 Sirlons is a mutant with 2 heads, 1 at each end of its body. Superior intellect. Other Sirlons look to the 2-headed ones for leadership. That's, they kind of make me think of those really annoying big guys with the freaking crazy guns and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, whose names I can't remember. Rhaegar are strange looking, and I like them, and I kind of, that would be cool to have one as a playable character. That was the first thing I thought. You don't really choose between male and female because they are sexless. They're androgynous folk who evolved into humanoid shape from species of cephalopods, similar to octopi. They have bioluminescent freckles and the ability to change the coloration of their skin. A glory or halo surrounds each of them. This magical display is a cloud of twinkling, glittering motes that changes color randomly and repels attacks. Rhaegar don't trust in one another, which has been the case ever since they destroyed their home world in a war that ended with a cataclysmic event called the Master Stroke. The planet's destruction was the culmination of a plot to create the most beautiful display of carnage the multiverse had ever seen. Rhaegar exists solely to make art and wage war. They consider warfare to be the highest form of artistic endeavor, and every act of violence they commit is done with the intent of creating something beautiful. Rhaegar wander wild space and astral sea in search of artistic inspiration, traveling in symbiotic organic ships. They create... They're the ones who operate aesthetics. Each Rhaegar possesses a magic item called Tal'Dorei, which is created and to which it alone can attune. If this object is lost or destroyed, it takes 1d10 plus 20 days for Rhaegar to craft another one. They're considered legendary. It's a piece of jewelry, bracelet, brooch, or necklace, while the Rhaegar wears Tal'Dorei. Any weapon wielded by the Rhaegar deals an extra d6 force damage when it hits. That is, there's CR8. Dear Lord. They are no joke. So, make sure to bring something that light my nose with this time. I speak too much and I get just a little awkward. Scabbers. I had whales. Now we have to have sharks. Shark-like scavengers that fly through space, feeding on whatever they can fit in their mouths. Yep. They come at you with those black eyes, doll-like eyes. Then you start kicking and screaming, and sometimes they turn around. Other times they don't. They bite you, and those black eyes roll over. Another reference. I love my references. Movie references. That's Jaws. It's talking about the USS Indianapolis. Have a USS Indianapolis moment in space where scabbers are just attacking people wrecked in space. Oh, horrible. Absolutely horrible. They come in 4 varieties: brown scabber, night scabber, void scabber, and gray scabber. Highest CR is 11 and considered huge monstrosities. You have a swallowing bite and a bonus action of Ray of Fear. It's the DC 16 wisdom saving throw or be frightened. That's pretty intimidating. Here, another one of my favorite creatures out of this, the Solar Dragon. I should have 2 dragon gods, a moon dragon, and then a solar dragon, which basically I just ripped from Fizban's treasury, the Fizban's book with the great worms. So like a solar great worm and a moon great worm. Stat blocks to basically create gods of these. That'd be so cool. For my homebrew world, I have to do that. Oh, they have photonic breath. I want to see that. And they are challenge rating 20 already. Let's read about them first. A solar dragon, also known as a radiant dragon or a sun dragon, is born in the heart of a star. It divides its time outside its lair between patrolling its territory and hunting for food. The dragon has a serpentine body, a pair of ventral limbs ending in long fins, nebulous wings that give off light, and gleaming multicolored scales. It can see clearly even in blindingly bright light. Solar dragons are fond of treasure, just as all dragons are, but in the airless void of wild space, they value food even more. Solar dragons typically feed on Kindari. No! Why would you eat Kindari? Come on, you made me like you just a little bit less. Scabbers and other forms of space-dwelling wildlife. A solar dragon might mistake a distant spelljamming ship for possible prey, and come within range of the vessel's weapons before realizing its error and veering away. A wise or experienced captain won't take the dragon's approach as a sign of hostility. Solar dragons that are fired upon have been known to batter the offending ships to Flinders. Solar dragons are territorial carnivores, and they behave accordingly. A young solar dragon might lay claim to an asteroid belt, where food is relatively plentiful, while an ancient solar dragon might consider an entire wild space system as its hunting ground. They tend to give a wide berth to humanoid folk, whom they find violent and tiresome. Trespassers who are detected in the solar dragon's lair can expect to be met with resistance, followed by hostility, especially if the lair contains eggs. A solar dragon egg has an obsidian shell, shiny black and opaque. When an egg is close to hatching, the shell becomes translucent, allowing the light from the unborn wormling's wings to shine through. I just think these things are so cool. And, yeah. Oh my god. Stellar incineration. Any creature that enters the star or starts its turn inside it takes 132 24d10 radiant damage. Of course. I mean, how? How are you going to fight one of these? You need like some special freaking item to even going into a solar dragon's lair. This is 20th level. Why? Why would you do it? 24d10. That's a maximum of 240 damage. Blinding radiance. A creature within 10 miles of a star or inside it is blinded by its intense light unless the creature has protective gear to shield its eyes, such as goggles of night or similar form of eyewear. I can imagine a quest where you need to steal a solar dragon's egg for some like crazy magical thing. It has a 12d10 radiant damage photonic breath. Does it do anything else? So 40-foot radius spheres. So the dragon exhales a flashing mote of radiant energy that travels to a point the dragon can see within 240 feet of itself, then blossoms into a 40-foot radius sphere centered on that point. Each creature in the sphere must make a DC 23 Constitution saving throw, taking 66 12d10 radiant damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. Yeah, it's like a fireball, but twice as big, dealing radiant damage instead of fire, with a basically twice as much damage. Yeah, that's pretty intimidating. And the Constitution saving throw is no joke. DC 23. Yeah, it's pretty intense individual. Space clowns. Space clowns are the inhabitants of wild space system known as clown space. Clown space, yes. How does anybody not know about clown space? The humans who once inhabited the system's three-ring-shaped worlds placed their faith in a god of revelry. Their worship ceremonies were centered on festivals and frivolity. Over time, the people's happiness hinged on ever-increasing consumption of elixir called Thrilljoy. Only after they became addicted did they discover that the priests of their faith had distilled the elixir from demonic ichor and the nectar of the bozo flower. Eventually, Thrilljoy transformed the faithful into fiendish creatures and blessed them with clown-like appearances. Space clowns acquired their first spell-jamming helms from Duwar merchants. Subsequent visits to other world space systems led to the contact of a multitude of other folk in the wake of these encounters. Love and fear of clowns has spread to all corners of the multiverse, just as the space clowns had done themselves. Yeah, they're only CR2, but I could imagine a multitude of ways of reskinning certain things and making more space clowns. Space clowns for everyone. And in one of their unofficial books, Minsk and Booze, they have a clown guy or like some crazy Joker-like individual, and I could imagine him having a bunch of these space clowns just reskinned, or have him in an actual space Spelljammer campaign. Yeah, you got space eels, space guppies, bubble, 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 guppies. I'm sure a lot of you who are parents out there, I'm not a parent, but I lived with my brother for a bit. His kids watched Bubble Guppies. I'm sure that really did not bring back good memories by me saying that. You got the giant space hamster, but notably and sadly, you do not have a giant miniature space hamster available stat block. And it's very unfortunate. I'm very upset. I think because we don't have the stat block for a miniature giant space hamster, it really kind of like decreases the value of this whole thing, and I don't think it should be bought. I'm just saying, we don't have the stat block for miniature giant space hamster. It's just a whole wash, the whole thing. But they have an intelligence of 2 and make 1 melee weapon attack. Our challenge rating 1/4 with 22 HP. I don't think anybody's gonna ever want to fight a space hamster. Not that they couldn't beat it, but because why would you want to fight that? Like, why would you do that? Horrible. You have regular space hamsters, apparently, instead of giant space hamsters, which are markedly more intelligent at 6 intelligence. The first space hamsters were created by wizards who used magic to shrink giant space hamsters into wee size, leading their creators to refer to them as miniature giant space hamsters. Oh. Okay, never mind. Right here. I take back everything I said. But they should have really just changed that to miniature giant space hamster instead of just space hamster. Screw, saving space. The magic also made the space hamster smarter and telepathic. These benign rodents are native to wild space, though countless numbers of them have found their way to worlds throughout the material plane where they are known simply as hamsters. They keep their telepathic ability hidden from most creatures they come near. This is clearly a reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where the smartest, I know there are only 6 intelligence in this, but the smartest creatures in the universe are lab rats. And I feel like this is a reference to that, and I love it. I do. I love it. You have space swine and space mollymogs. What else you got? Suren. Suren are lizard folk, and we're almost done with this, so I'm going to try and get through. Who have adapted to life in arid climates and in wild space. You can use lizard folk stat block in the monster's manual to represent them in addition to the variants determined or described below. And you have the Suren poisoners and defilers. That's interesting. Not much to learn about them. The Starlight Apparition is one of my favorites. I think they're so cool, and I'd love to use one day. The transparent projection of unfortunate souls who perished in wild space or in the astral sea are known as Starlight Apparitions. Each one has luminous incorporeal appearances that resemble its former self, but with eyes that glow. A Starlight Apparition is different from a ghost. While a ghost is doomed to haunt the place where it died until some promise or goal it couldn't achieve and life is fulfilled, the goal of a Starlight Apparition is to help someone else avoid or overcome a perilous obstacle or accomplish a difficult task. A Starlight Apparition comes into being when the soul of a deceased individual from its resting place afterlife projects a spectral copy of itself across the vast distances with the help of a deity or another powerful entity. The apparition lasts only as long as its services are needed to complete the task at hand. Then it fades away, never to return. I think that's just cool. It's a ghost, but the opposite of a ghost. And they are considered celestials. Admittedly, I like this because it leads towards the possibility of a very emotional RP where somebody has some person from their past that died and it just gutted them. And then just having the Starlight Apparition come out. That would just be so nice. I'm tearing up as it is. We got the Thry-Kreen here. Gladiator, Hunter, and Mystic. what much is there to know about them? CR7, like, I don't even know if I want to go over them because I already went over them in the Adventurer's Guide. It's kind of understanding who they are and what they do. They speak telepathically. They can't speak to people unless they do it telepathically because they mandibles. Hey guys, another one of my favorites here. I'll go over this. How much have we got left? The Zodar will briefly go over, but the Vampirates. I can't not go over the Vampirates before the end of this video. Vampirates are the walking, talking husks of dead pirates who refuse to go quietly into the afterlife. They ply the void in their ships, plundering unsuspecting vessels and feeding on the life energy of those unlucky enough to cross their path. The vampirate appears as a gaunt figure with milky white eyes and skin as dry as parchment. Some have a peg leg or a hook in place of a hand, mementos of a life of misadventure. A vampirate has fangs like a vampire's, but doesn't use them to draw vital fluids from prey, which vampirates consider an unsavory act. Rather, a vampirate drains life energy from another creature by touching it, or siphoning off its energy from short distance away. As it feeds on the energy of other creatures, its appearance becomes more robust. Although it never truly looks alive, vampires eat, drink, and sleep because they like to, not because they must. They rest in wooden coffins or crates full of grave dirt. In the absence of such containers, they can treat their ship's hold as one big coffin and sleep amid their cargo. When they are not sleeping or marauding, a crew of vampirates while away the hours by drinking rum and singing grim chanties. A ship crewed by vampirates usually has one or more shadows aboard, the undead remains of some of the vampirates, not vampires. Very, very important difference. Some of the vampirates' victims. What do you do? I mean, this is a terrifying universe. You've got vampirates. Like, who would want to explore when you have a vampirate coming at you? Like, come on. And then the Zodar. Bipedal entities encased in obsidian exoskeleton. They do seem pretty... They are CR16. I imagine, like, some creepy lich's space lair having a couple of these, you know... They have legendary resistances. What? Wait, what? They have Wish. The Zodar casts the Wish spell, requiring no spell components, using Charisma as spellcasting ability. After casting this spell, the Zodar turns to dust and is destroyed. They are neutral. Actually, let's read about this real quick. This is the end of the book. A Zodar is a bipedal entity whose body is encased in obsidian exoskeleton. It has no facial features aside from two narrow vertical slits that resemble eyes, and his countenance betrays no hint of pain or emotion. Underneath its armored exterior, Zodar's body is composed of tightly knit muscle fibers that make it incredibly strong and heavy. A Zodar weighs 1,500 pounds. Nobody knows how many Zodars exist or where they come from, but the most popular hypothesis is that they are the creations of some long-forgotten god. Zodars interact with other sapient creatures in a manner that goes beyond mere aloofness. They simply hover in silence. When a Zodar finally performs some significant action, the reasons for that action aren't always clear. One interpretation of this behavior posits that each Zodar has a specific mission and is relentless in its pursuit of the goal, but it reacts oddly to situations that don't involve its mission because it doesn't know what else to do. Another theory is that all Zodars are working in concert to achieve some master objective. A third, less ominous idea is that Zodars lost their sense of purpose when their creators vanished, and they are struggling to find their new role. A Zodar can cause speech to issue from the air around it on 3 occasions in its lifetime. When it feels compelled to speak, it chooses its words wisely. It can also warp the fabric of the multiverse to cast the Wish spell. As its final act, it is destroyed once the spell is cast. That is actually rather it is both creepy and interesting, and it's not clearly not meant necessarily as something to fight. No, you could have this idea of a Zodar who is like, will grant a wish if you defeat it in battle. That is interesting. But that is going to end our detailed look over Boo's Astral Menagerie. Obviously not 100% detailed, but what do you do? This would have been far longer. I'm not going to read every last bit of this, but I hope you enjoyed it. Look down in the links in the description for where you can find the music and how you can support me. But otherwise, I'm not going to, once again, belabor the point, and we'll finish up here. I don't know if I'm going to get Light of Syrinxis done. I don't think I kind of want to read over Light of Syrinxis in some detailed manner before I actually take the time to go over it with people for DMs. So unfortunately, that will not be coming out immediately. I think it's just wiser to wait a bit on Light of Syrinxis and really take the time to look it over. But you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, night, I don't know. Whatever time you're here. Thank you for showing up, and have a wonderful day. Peace.